again, there we go. You might get a little sign on your computer. So just to kick off, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Jill Shepherd. I am, as you can tell, I'm based in Central Scotland, probably from the accent. I'm an emotional logic coach and trainer. I've got 3 children now. I've got 2 boys aged 15 and 13. And my daughter is 8, going on 18, very much the diva. So I became involved in emotional logic through a session just like this one a number of years ago, when I was looking for tools and how best to support my autistic son, who at the time was on what felt like a never-ending waiting list to be assessed. So I found emotional logic. I found people like Caroline here, she's one of the coaches and trainers on emotional logic as well. And it's just lovely, and it's so inspiring to be part of this community. It's so helpful, and it really helped me become more aware of myself, my emotions, my responses and reactions, and which in turn helped us as a family to recognise how we reacted and responded to emotions and situations that we were facing. And it really gave us a positive and healthy language to use. And I've really not looked back since, and it's a real privilege to be here this evening sharing it with you all. So here we go. So what we're going to do just now is we're going to show you a 2-minute video that will explain like the origins, if you will, of emotional logic. And thereafter we'll go into it in a bit deeper. So if you bear with me, I'm going to share this video.
Surprising as it may seem, all of your unpleasant emotions have useful purposes. They're not there just to spoil life. They're part of your survival mechanisms. They move you in new ways when you need to adjust to setbacks and disappointments or hurts. The trouble is that people usually get several disappointments all in one go. Missing an interview, for example, because of travel delays, brings several possible losses. People can be angry about one, shocked about another, feel guilty about yet another, and depressed about what might happen next, all at the same time. So people end up not knowing what they feel, except that life is horrible. Then the emotions are so jumbled up that people cannot recognize or use each one properly for its inbuilt useful purpose. That's where emotional logic steps in. It helps people to learn how all these unpleasant emotions fit together in a logical way to help the adjustment process along. The emotions are not the problem. They're part of the solution when people can see how to untangle them and then turn them to something constructive. So what is emotional logic? Emotional logic is a way of thinking and preparing for action that helps people to untangle the roots of anxiety and depression. Then they feel more able to influence the relationships that have been giving them grief, but influence them in a way that builds a stronger life. Who's it for? People of any age can learn to activate their emotional logic. It gets people talking constructively about difficult subjects, especially across the generations. So family life, school and workplace situations become less worrying. Where did emotional logic come from? It was developed by a doctor in the 1990s as a way to prevent illness. But its lifelong learning method has been found to work even better to actively promote good health. It's used now in healthcare, schools, and in workplace, community and family support. Emotional logic is both safe and effective to learn, even when people have underlying distress about difficult situations in their lives. It gives hope and restores a sense of purpose to life. So that's what emotional logic is. Everyone has it, you just need to learn to activate it. The Emotional Logic Centre...
All right, so I'm just going to pause it there and bring us back to the presentation. Okay. Bear with me, I've got a million windows open just now. All right, so here we go. So the best way to understand how this can help you is to try it for yourself. So even if you're learning this to actually help your family, the best way to do this is to really have a go yourself, really get to grips with the information. And as I've said, this is how I personally learned emotional logic. And it's just really been such a transforming tool to have. So obviously this evening we are speaking to, well, I am. I thought I had more of a team. Obviously Caroline is here visiting, but she's just getting to sit back and listen. So I'm here myself. But I'm speaking to you as adults, you know, not necessarily thinking this is how you would be expected to explain this to your children, but please don't worry if you feel this seems too complicated. We do have lots of different methods and materials to help engage with whoever you're working with at their level of understanding. And obviously this evening, I'd love for you to ask questions, but since it's mainly myself here, if you wouldn't mind putting any questions in the chat function, and what we can do is at the end, hopefully there'll be a bit of time where we can stay a bit longer if you're able, and we can address some of those questions. Again, you have my email. I did send the link out to you, so you're most welcome to email me there as well. And I just want to point out, although it is not our intention ever to upset anybody on a call, we always like to be in a space where this is a learning environment. Sometimes issues we discuss can be quite sensitive, and it may be possible for some people to recall traumatic events or become upset. If this happens, please do not worry. You're welcome to send me a private message if you want to, but you're most welcome just to go and get some, like, a breath of fresh air and return, or we can send you the recording when you're feeling stronger to listen to it. We're not going to question why. This is a very safe environment for all of that. So this evening, we're going to look at a simple overview of the emotional logic method and the practical things that you yourselves can do. And we're going to look at how you can start using it personally to support you and your family. And then if hopefully we'll have time, we can have a look at where you could possibly go after this seminar this evening. So here we go. I'm going to just delve into our life cycle for emotional logic. That's what we call it. But we always like to start where life feels good. And I'm sure there are times when, you know, we feel this way. Hopefully there's lots of times when you feel this way. We're human. We're designed to love and have connection and relationship with others, be it in family or work or your community. And in that, we all have values and we all care about different things. And that love connects us to people who are important to us. And it also makes us respond to whatever is important to us as well. Now, when life is going well and our relationships and our connections, you know, with others are good, life is good and we feel positive and we have energy and we're in this state of joy, we like to call it. Now, that being said, we also know that it's not realistic to think we'll be joyful 24/7 and that life will always feel good all of the time. So because people, you know, we're all unique. We can have different backgrounds, you know, we think differently, we look different, we sound different. Hopefully my accent's not too different, you're keeping up with me. And we'll inevitably face diversity of some sort across the way. And there will be disappointments and setbacks and misunderstandings, and they disturb our connections that we have with people, and it breaks down that state of joy that we were in. So it breaks down, when life was good, breaks that down into what we call shock. Now, when you hear the term shock, I think our first thoughts might be that this is what, you know, someone experiences if they've been involved in a terrible accident. And although this is true, in the emotional logic method, we teach that shock is an emotion, and it's a very important emotion, most often the very first emotion that we feel, because it's a physiological response in our bodies, and it's activated every time something important to us is threatened. So it's like our warning system. Then it's warning us that something important is happening. And I'm sure you can recognise what shock feels like for you. Now, this list here that you can see is just a list of feelings that can present in your body. They don't all have to present in your body when you experience the shock emotion. And these are the feelings that are triggered when we feel, at times when we feel like, oh, I don't know if I've got the resources to cope with this. Or sometimes it could be a very, very small situation that we're facing, or sometimes a very significant and intense one. And sometimes we've genuinely lost something, or we've not experienced a loss yet, but the potential and the risk of a loss happening can still trigger these same emotions and feelings just the same. So when we're pulled from feeling like life is good and we're faced with this uncomfortable situation or uncertainty, our body's warning system, which is our shock emotion, it starts to become alert. And, you know, it's like an alarm, and we might find ourselves questioning at that point, what went wrong? What did I do? I can't believe this has happened. I have no idea how to manage this. And when that shock happens, it's because our body is reacting. It's not just all in our head. In response to a threat or stress, the brain sends a message through the nervous system to produce adrenaline, and it starts to produce cortisol, as I'm sure you'll know is the stress hormone, and it prepares us for what is necessary to survive in the situation that we found ourselves in. Now, moments where we consider it to be stressful or frightening, and that survival mode pushes us into a fight, flight, and freeze reaction, and it shuts down our ability to think clearly. Now, as we've already seen, there are many different symptoms that can be experienced when feeling shock. So I'd like you all to have a think about a time where you felt shock before. You know, a time where you felt unprepared for what you were facing and you didn't feel like you had the resources to cope or the know-how to cope. I want you to think about how your body reacted to that shock and remembering those feelings that we just looked at. If you have any symptoms that you recognise, can you maybe add them into the chat? You don't need to, but it'd be nice to get some kind of input from yourselves. And if you wanted to add that into the chat, and we can have a little look and compare, some will have differences, some might be the same. I know when I'm nervous, I get kind of cold and shaky, and my heart feels like it's going to burst out my chest. It goes so fast. So if anyone has like anything that they recognise, and you know, when they're feeling shock, it'd be lovely to kind of share those together. I've got children that I've worked with before, they get butterflies in their tummy, or some children feel sick and they don't recognise it as stress, they just recognise it as an uncomfortable kind of pain. That's how they describe it. It's like a pain in their stomach sometimes. And other people might get sweaty palms. I also have the issue of like my thinking goes very unclear and get very cloudy as well. So some of you might be able to relate to that. And hopefully as you're sitting here, you can identify how shock presents in your own body. You might like to start thinking about, if you've noticed this in your families, how each individual, how you know they recognize, like how they perform and present with shock as well. But what we wanted to talk about this evening is like, how can we move forward from the stress that we're experiencing? Now, in emotional logic, we teach that our emotions have useful purposes, even the unpleasant ones. And when we recognise whichever emotion is at play in our bodies, we can access that useful purpose to help us positively move forward in life. Now, shock's useful purpose, as much as it alerts us, it's our warning signal. It tells us to stop what we're doing, to find our safe place, to calm down, calm our system down, help us regulate, and then plan the next steps of how to move forward. So we describe a safe place to be either a physical place, like it could be, like I've got a favourite chair that I like to sit in, with a blanket, preferably with a coffee as well, or some nice trash on the telly, and that helps me just regulate myself. Perhaps you have like a room in your home that you like to go to. Some people like to go for an outdoor walk. They've got a nice place, you know, a nice park near them that they can just clear their mind and get some fresh air. Some people like to do swimming or running, and that helps. Now then we also say there's a safe frame of mind, a safe mindset, we would say. You might like to explore mindfulness, or use breathing techniques and grounding techniques to, like, you know, maybe meditate. If you have a faith, you might like to pray in these moments as well, and that just helps regulate your system and find your peace. Or like these little meerkats under the heat lamp, I think they're meerkats. It's often good to seek like trustworthy company, maybe a relationship, a safe relationship with somebody you can rely on and be honest with. And hopefully you can all think of somebody that you have, you know, like a friend, best friend, a partner, you know, somebody that you are in connection with. Even your pet could be a safe relationship for some. Not my Whippet, I've got a Whippet, but he's so anxious he needs his own support dog, so we can't use him, unfortunately. But a safe place, as it says here, it's not somewhere you go and bury your head in the sand and escape what is happening. Like it says here on the slide, it's not a bomb shelter to hide until things blow over. It's a place where you can regulate your anxiety and your panic until your brain and body calm down and allows you to think clearly. And as I've mentioned, when you go into shock, you go into that, you know, fight, flight, freeze, survival mentality. So your thinking brain, it shuts down and that survival brain takes over. And obviously it's designed to help us evade danger. But when we get stuck in that overwhelming anxiety, because let's say we are physically safe and there isn't physical danger, we still need to help calm ourselves down before we can think clearly. And having safe places to access when you experience symptoms of shock will help you. And if you can recognise this for your child, it'll help them as well, and it'll help you all regulate faster. And it's that safe place where we can let our adrenaline settle. But once that happens, we don't stop there. We like to make a plan to help ourselves overcome the thing that upset us, just little steps that we can find. And I always suggest noting where your safe places are, or noting your children's safe places, talking to them about this and writing them down. You know, where are your safe places when you're at home, or your safe relationships? Where are they when you're at work or the kids are at school? You know, who's our safe people, and you know, where are their safe places that they can access should they need to. And you know, whatever situations you feel most anxious in, plan ahead. Know what your safe place would be in any of these scenarios, so you're never caught without somewhere to be, and so you can respond quickly. And it's also a reason to practice a safe frame of mind that you can access wherever you are. And for your children, ensuring you have this conversation with them to help them think who or where they could go to help them regulate and feel safe with. And it would make sense maybe to even create a little list of their safe places, safe people, safe mindsets, because, you know, as I've said before, if you're in shock, your thinking and your choice making, decision making can become clouded. So to have a little note telling you step by step what to do when you're feeling panicked or anxious is really very helpful. Who are the people they can connect with that can help them, like their teachers or support staff? Are there some grounding and breathing techniques that you could teach them, or have a little picture that helps guide them through these? And this list could be shared with teachers, babysitters, support staff, you know, anyone caring for your children, really, grandparents. That kind of idea. If you've got it written down, it's really good to share that on. My middle son went through a stage where he refused to go to school in his last year of primary. So that's primary 7. So he would be about 11 going on 12 at that age. So he was definitely affected by the lockdowns during the pandemic. His confidence and social ability and skills, like, they took a real dive. We saw that happen. His anxiety and stress levels were very high. And we worked closely with the school so that when he was there, when we actually got him in the door, it was ensured that he had access to the teachers that he felt safe with, and also the places. So there was a base within the school that he could go to should he need it. And these adjustments helped him find the confidence to actually return to school, knowing that he could escape his classroom, you know, and the environment and the noise that was there, which was just a bit overwhelming for him. But they helped him return to school, and he learned how to manage his overwhelm in a healthier way. But it did take time. It did take conversation and learning, and between myself and my son and with the school, it took creating that plan to help him readjust. And I like to say, he's doing much better now. He's in high school, and, you know, things are going really well for him, and he's feeling much more confident. I would say we have the odd day where he's feeling a bit overwhelmed, but we address that and we realise that, you know, it's good. We want him to feel equipped and safe in school. And the odd day that he does stay home with me in the school. We keep the school informed of that as well. So it's just about communication and helping your child feel safe wherever they are. So back to this life cycle. So as you say, we already spoke about the section of shock, but what happens after shock? You know, as you can see from the image, following on from shock, we are propelled into this stress cycle of our grieving emotions where it's uncomfortable and chaotic. Now, as I mentioned, this is our life cycle. It will make a full circle. Life is a cycle of loss and gain. So at the moment, we're talking a lot about loss, but we will be coming back up the other side in a second, okay? So we are now in this stress cycle of our grieving emotions where it's uncomfortable. And this is where we can experience emotions like anger and guilt, denial and depression, and all the feelings that are wrapped up into those. And we experience grieving emotions all the time. It could be something absolutely as trivial as not being able to find your child's shoe, so you can't get out the door, or you could be experiencing something as intense as a bereavement, but the actual named emotions are the same in either situation. There's just obviously a different intensity experience there. But when our joy turns to grief, there's this urge to reconnect or fix the thing that pulled us away from our joyful comfort zone where life felt good. And you want to fix that setback or misunderstanding, or recover that loss that you experienced and gain something back in return. And you only grieve, this is a really big point, you only grieve if you have loved or cared for something. You only grieve over something you value. And if you don't value it, it's not a big issue to you. So when we see our children expressing big emotion, it's often because they value something, and dependent on their developmental level, they may be struggling to express that. Now, it's often because, you know, when they're really young, we've given them the green cup, but they really wanted the blue cup, but they are attempting to communicate their values. They might kick off with a tantrum, but it's because they valued something specific in particular. The purpose of grief is to help us move forward, and these grief emotions are unpleasant because we're not supposed to stay with them for too long, but we'll learn that these emotions, although they're uncomfortable, they have a useful purpose to help prepare us to restore our joy and gain something from the loss we've experienced. Whatever that gain is, it will help us grow in some capacity. So as you can see, here we go. Bargaining and acceptance follow on from our stress cycle, and these are our two growth points. These are our two ways out of our uncomfortable feelings. What plan can I make where I may have to take an assertive risk, but I can do something to gain back what I've lost? Or what has to be accepted and let go? And we never try to gain back or let go of everything or a whole situation all at once. What we do, especially in emotional logic, we break each major grieving issue into like kind of bite-sized manageable pieces. And we discover that within each major loss, there are usually lots of smaller hidden losses. And, you know, we realize that they become unstuck from this situation that we've found ourselves in. We choose just one of those losses to deal with at a time. And by doing that, we're being realistic. We find, you know, renewed and fresh energy to work within our limitations and discover new ways of coping, new resources that equip us to move forward feeling positive and empowered, and come full circle back to where life feels good and we have grown, and we're stronger for managing our disappointments and our grief in this assertive way, and we're more equipped for the next time around. So emotional logic helps us move through this process far more quickly and adjust in a far healthier way when we understand these useful purposes and start to implement them in our lives. Now, please, this is a huge diagram, okay? When we first get to see this, we're like, whoa, there's so much information. So please don't feel overwhelmed by this. I'm going to break it down. It's a busy one, but I'm just showing you it to help you understand that logic and emotions can go together. This is a visual of the healthy adjustment process, and we call it the turning points diagram, because we intentionally turn to face whatever situation has been presented to us. And using the emotional logic method enables people to bring their reasoning, so their logic and their emotional energy into this healthy partnership. And because we're creating awareness of our emotions and the purpose they have to then equip and empower us to adjust, to change, and again, help us move on. So if we just look along the purple arrows at the top, as we turn to face a situation, can we recognise what we are losing or might lose? And here is where we might experience shock or denial. The next one is, can we prevent any losses we have named? And this is often where our anger or guilt is activated when we're trying to prevent losses. Can we recover those losses that we've not been able to prevent? So we might take a risk here. You might have to assess your limitations and try something else. So the bargaining and depression emotions are found here. Just a note for the side here, it's not clinical depression. I don't know if I get the chance to touch on that, but certainly if you became involved in a bit more with emotional logic, it's just to let you know depression is an emotion where it's when you feel hopeless, when you feel powerless, you know, you're helpless in a situation. It's not clinical depression, okay? Just something to note if you see that written here. Number 4, there we go, is let go of a loss and explore something new. And that's where we often see our acceptance. And in this place, we can actually feel joy and sadness together as we learn to let go of things and move on. And sometimes that means letting go of things that are valuable to us, but we can't hold on to them anymore. So you'll notice the blue river of grief flowing across the page. And in emotional logic, we call emotions stepping stones because, albeit these are unpleasant to experience, they are firm emotional preparation states in our bodies. They're solid stepping stones in this grief river, each one preparing us to get onto the next emotion until we can reach and use our growth points, which is bargaining or acceptance, to find our way through and out of that difficult situation. Now, however unpleasant they are, these are still healthy preparation states and are normal in grieving, and they help us cross the river and overcome the disappointments or setbacks that we've been exposed to. Now, when I work with children, I often use this illustration that the feelings produced from emotions, like we discussed earlier with shock, can be like lily pads around our stepping stone. So I have children kind of acting it out. We've got our big blue blanket, and I put down foam mats that are like the stepping stones. And then I use lily pads to distinguish between the solid preparation state, the solid emotion that we can stand on and access a useful purpose, but we can also acknowledge that there are lots of feelings that come with that, but we can't rest on them. They're not useful to us. We have to focus on the emotion and its useful purpose. But that's why they're described as being firm preparation states in our body, because we can spend some time there and find a use for them. Now, most people, as you can see on this page here, they don't go through this process in this logical order. We don't feel things in a set way. Things move too quickly. We can get overwhelmed with emotions. We might jump back and revisit certain emotions when we're trying to deal with situations. But it's useful to see that emotions have purpose, and they're not just random feelings that hold us back. They can actually be used to help us adjust quicker and healthier, that, like I've already said. All right, so the river is split horizontally here, and the darker blue stream that you can see are our action drives. There are action emotions. They give us energy to change the world around us, while those in the lighter blue are withdrawal drives. There are withdrawal emotions. They give us energy to change who we are inside. So to effectively resolve some losses, we may require using a combination of both emotions with action drives and withdrawal drives. Okay. So as you've heard, there's lots of information that I've shared with you. I am bombarding you tonight. You know, and again, it's from an adult to adult perspective to help you understand the benefits of the emotional logic method. But we would never expect children to learn like this. And thankfully, in emotional logic, we have lots of practical tools to help learn and explore their emotions and their feelings to enable them to make sense of what they're experiencing in a safe way. So currently in our online shop, and we'll have a quick look hopefully at the end if there's time, we have emotion and feelings cards, and we're going to be looking at them shortly. We have some beautifully illustrated Shelley and Friends storybooks, and that can help express emotion through storytelling for younger children. And we've got some children's workbooks for the older ages that provide a step-by-step process to learn in a safe and gentle way. There's an emotional survival kit, which is designed for tweens and teens as well. So these can all be found on our online shop, and I'll provide you with that link in the chat in a little bit. So we're just going to look at the stepping stone cards together. All right, so these are our stepping stone picture cards. We used to call these the children's stepping stone cards. However, people like myself who appreciate a visual now and again have found them very useful to help connect with our emotions. You'll notice they all have a little expressive icon. There's 7 of them, and they convey a sense of movement. Not every child or person connects with facial expression. You know, when we consider those who are neurodiverse as well, that's relevant to them too. So these graphics have been selected to illustrate and describe the emotion. And in emotional logic, we actually talk about our emotions giving us energy. Excuse me. So we consider emotion, which if we can think of it as energy in motion. Now we do have orange emotion cards that simply have the word of the emotion on them without the picture. Again, these used to be called the adult stepping stones, but they work well for some. They're nice and succinct, and those are accessible on our online tools site. I'll give you a little glimpse at that later. And on the back of all the emotion cards, we have further information describing how to adjust what the emotion means and its specific useful purpose. So the information is always on the back of the card. So as an organisation, we learn from our learners, we're person-centred, and we adapt and we're flexible to suit different learning styles to help everybody connect with and express their inner emotional life. So we're finding a language that works for them. And emotional logic is all about creating conversation and helping us connect healthily with our emotional processing and in our relationships as well. So I'm going to like share the emotional logic tools site just now. All being well, it'll work smoothly for me, which, as I've mentioned, is an online version of the stepping stone cards. And I'm just going to share this with you just now. Let's see if we can bring it up. Here we go. This is just an example I want to show you of somebody who refused to go to school. This is what I'll do is I will take the feelings away just now, not to confuse us. So right now, somebody, a school refuser, used this pattern to describe how they felt in the morning when they were unable to go to school. So as you can see here, the first one that they put down was shock. Now, if I touch shock on this screen, hopefully you'll be able to see what's on the back of these cards. So as you can see here, it tells us how to adjust, what it means, and its useful purpose. And if I just press it again, it disappears. So this person put shock because when their alarm went off, it was shocking to them. They've just been woken up out of a really deep, deep sleep, and it was not pleasant for them. And if they're anything like my teenagers, which, you know, they just struggle to get out of their bed completely. So they're in shock. They're a bit kind of anxious at being woken up. So, you know, I think we can all remember the noise of our alarms, certainly. And then we've got denial. They didn't want to wake up. They were in denial. I'm not going to get up. It's too early for me. I'm not listening. And they can hear their parents shouting, and they've put down the guilt card because they feel bad that they're not doing what they're being told. And then they're angry because their parents still shouting at them, and then they feel a bit helpless because they're really struggling with going to school. They're really finding it very difficult and they just don't know how to make it work. I'm going to show you the feelings cards now because they help create a bigger picture for us. As you can see here, we've got, I don't know if you can see me pointing, we've got anxious up here along with shock. We've got irritated, we've got a bit more, this panicky is actually connected with shock, so it's kind of there with anger. We've got hopeless and pointless because this person's really struggling to motivate themselves or feel comfortable going to school. We do have a growth point here. Bargaining is one of our growth points. However, they're trying, but it seems a bit ineffective because they've got all these difficult feelings going on and it propels them back into this state of shock. So unfortunately, this person was in this cyclical pattern. This is emotional pattern. Now, as coaches, we're trained to interpret these patterns and we can delve deeper. We've not got time to go into it, but it is very, very interesting how we can start to pull apart someone's emotional, inner life and help them explore why they're feeling. But if you had cards like this to work with your family, it's really good because you can able to say, well, why did you put that card there? Why are we feeling guilty here? And we can turn the card over and we can see, right, okay, so you feel like, you're responsible for something. So what could that be? And how could you make a difference for next time? And again, if they were angry, we'll talk about anger in a little bit actually, so I won't go into that, but we're trying to prevent a loss there. And again, depression, what we see in the other side of that, we're recognizing our limits. That's the useful purpose of it. But at the moment we're stuck in it, we're not activating our useful purpose here. Now, if I come out of that and show you, oh, there we go. If I can show you a slightly healthier one, one where they've actually accessed, I'm just trying to move your heads out the way, sorry guys, so that I can see the screen. This one is not stuck in a cycle. As you can see, this person's still going through the same thing, still a school refuser. There is no right or wrong to these patterns. People lay them out in any which way they want. But as you can see, it's more linear. They go through similar emotions, shock, denial, and there's anger. They didn't use guilt this time, that was okay. They've got depression there, but it seems that they've gone into bargaining and they've tried to do something different and they've actually got to acceptance and they've maybe worked through something. They've worked through their situation. So like my son did, we had an action plan at school and he was able to come to terms with the fact that he's going to go to school, but he's going to be supported. So this has had, it wasn't going round and round and being stuck in those horrible, unpleasant feelings, but he was actually able to access, he went through the stress cycle using the useful purposes of the unpleasant emotions. There's no bad emotion, they're just unpleasant. And then we got to the bargaining and acceptance, and that was our growth. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just share again the presentation, if I can get back to that. Oh, excuse me, I've got all these windows open again. All right, so as I was saying, we're trained to look at these patterns, but if you're using them with your family, we want to, encourage the learner to discover the cards themselves with gentle guidance. We want to be curious. We want to ask questions to help them explore their feelings. We want to listen carefully, and we want to listen beyond what they're saying. We don't judge. We don't tell them what to do. We don't touch their cards, even if it's online. We don't touch them. That's their emotional space. And we respect that, and it helps them realise they're safe to feel those emotions without the fear of being corrected. There's no right or wrong to display them, like I said. Now, if you use the physical cards with children, which you can get in our shop, they're very, very, they've got very low price points, but we can often ask everyone in the room to make a card pattern so that the child doesn't think that they're the problem or anything, and it almost levels the playing field for them because, if we're all doing card patterns, we can then start to have our own emotional response and show them that it's all about creating conversation and creating awareness of how we feel differently or how we see things similarly as well. They're very helpful tools. As we've said all evening, all emotions have a useful purpose, and remember that there's a summary on the back of each card, and it's a really good way to start talking about things with someone. Now, we don't have time to talk about all the stepping stones. We're quickly running out of time now, actually, but this card here I want to focus on for just a little minute. It's a prime example of an emotion that gets a bad rap, and it has some real negative connotations. But as you can see here in emotional logic, when anger is present, it's because there's a strong urge to prevent the loss of something that is valued, something of importance. And usually that something is of value to the one who's showing anger. Anger means that I must stop this happening or prevent it from happening again. And the useful purpose is that it gives you the energy to take action out in the world and change something there. It's an outward looking emotion, and it's you protecting something that's very important, or it's at risk of being lost or has already been lost. Now, often children will have a meltdown when something important to them has been disrespected or threatened or lost in their eyes. You know, a competition, for example, they may feel that there's been an injustice. And I've been in situations with my own children where, you know, they felt that there's been an injustice, and there are some children who can feel this very strongly. They need to be heard, they need to be understood. My neurodiverse son has certainly struggled with competitions, but now that he's just a bit older, and now that we've been using emotional logic, he has learned how to manage himself and be aware of himself in most situations. But he still has his moments, we all do, but it's good to have that awareness. And when we give them space and actively listen to them, sometimes that's enough to find their calm and to process what's going on, and for us to make that little connection and conversation, and it helps them have more awareness of what is of value to them, and it opens up the possibility of discovering an assertive way forward. Okay. Now, many children, especially those who are referred to as emotional logic facilitators in school, is because they've been told they have an anger problem. And in emotional logic, we try to help them understand that actually it's not anger that's the problem. It is present, but there's at least one other emotion at play in these instances. Now, Christian Sterling, who is our schools lead, always tells schools that the children do not have an anger problem. They're probably just not using their anger energy effectively. So actually they have a bargaining problem. And when they learn to harness that bargaining energy, so instead of choosing passive or aggressive methods to express how they're feeling, then express that anger energy, they're shown how to choose assertive methods. And that's when you start to see that transformation. So sometimes we can use superheroes as an example. So when we think of the Hulk or Batman, they're all pretty grumpy. They get angry. They get angry because they want to protect what they care about. And anger gives them that energy to take risks, to be brave and make a change to make the world a better place. Anger can do this for you too. Obviously, it can't make you fly or run any faster, but it can give you the energy to, that you need to make a change. It is your passion for life. So it does go hand in hand with bargaining. And as parents, we can help our children learn to choose assertive bargaining methods as opposed to aggressive or passive ones. So behind the emotion, when we experience an emotional reaction, it's triggered by the threat of or the loss of something we value. In order to move forward, we need to name these and recognise what is important to that person. And this may not be what you think. Sometimes our children surprise us, and I've learned my lesson far too many times with my own children, where I wrongly assume their motives because the emotions they're presenting me with, I'm reminded it's important to truly listen to what's behind the emotion. And when we listen, we usually will hear, or at least be able to read between the lines, that there's more going on than perhaps just the obvious loss that we can see. So why do we list losses? That's something that we do in emotional logic. That's what we talked about way at the beginning, when we have the obvious main loss that we're talking about, but there's lots of hidden losses within that. Your personal loss list reflects your personal values. When we write out what has been lost, you can view that list and recognise all those values that a person has with regards to that main obvious loss that they're talking about. And it can be quite a considerable and lengthy list. So you know exactly what you've lost and therefore what to focus on to try to regain. And everything that has been swirling around in your head can now be out in front of you in plain sight. And this can help lessen the internal overwhelm and help you work towards recovering losses. I'm a list writer. I write lists for my lists and it gets it out of my head, because otherwise it's just all caught up there and it's all jumbled and it takes up so much of my head space, my mental space, and I don't know, I shut down. So if that helps you, please do write these lists out. But you can work together in your family to make a plan to recover one or more of those values, but one at a time. And we always begin with selecting one tangible loss to recover, and doing it together with family or a trusted relationship will provide that support to help focus and ensure that the family are all working towards the same goals. So this is an example of a loss reaction worksheet that we use. And as you can see, the main loss of refusing to go to school, this is just a really quick one I've drawn, but is the obvious loss. And this is not an exhaustive list, but look at how many hidden losses there are within this one situation. So one school refusal, but all of these hidden losses. Each hidden loss, so this is important as well, each hidden loss has its own emotional reaction as well. So no wonder this student feels so bad and is struggling. There are so many underlying emotional reactions involved than just the main obvious loss that they've told us about or that we've noticed. And by listing them, we bring them to light and we can slowly start to address them and support the student to overcome the issues holding them back. Now, the SMART question helps us explore with our children when they've perhaps identified losses. I talked about a tangible loss there. We like to try and pick a tangible loss to recover. Sometimes we identify losses that are not tangible losses. So for example, when I was talking earlier, I said my son lost a massive amount of confidence following the pandemic. Confidence is an intangible loss. It's not something that we can hold. So we ask the SMART question. Now that this thing has happened and I've lost my confidence, what is it that I can no longer do that I used to be able to do? And that helps us write another list of losses. And hopefully within that, we'll discover a tangible loss. So for him, one of the losses suffered due to lack of confidence would be playing with his basketball team. He used to love it, but he no longer felt able to go and be in that social situation. So that enabled us to have the conversation about missing out on a sport. How could we bring back some of the joy that he felt from basketball? So my husband would watch some games with him. We had a net out in the garden, a basket, is that what you call them? Oh yeah, basketball. I'm thinking netball. And then, you know, we'd encourage him to use that, we'd cheer him on, and eventually we started to have the odd friend over, and then some more friends, and they would all start to play basketball in the garden together. So that was something that we used the SMART question for. Now, we have to make a good plan. You know, why only one thing? So in emotional logic, we talk about the butterfly effect quite a bit. And just in case you've not heard what this is, now I'm a major dinosaur fan. And if you've not seen Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, the original one, first one, he talks about chaos theory, which I just realized the other week when I was watching it again. So it's really interesting. So the butterfly effect is a theory that evokes the idea that a small butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world could hypothetically cause a typhoon in another part. It's not meant to be taken literally. The butterfly effect metaphor is simply meant to demonstrate that a little insignificant change can lead to significant results over time. So when we talk about planning to recover just one thing that we've lost, it's hoped that by keeping it simple and achievable, that the action would start a cascade of events, excuse me, and a sense of movement in a situation where the individual experiences achievement however small, that then positively impacts the whole way they feel and think and believe about themselves and their situation and their relationships. Other losses then are suddenly recovered, and the individual begins to feel motivated and a bit more positive to make further progress. So what's important is how you go about recovering it. And that's when we need to consider how our bargaining is and how we go about recovering those losses. So to get back, we have 3 options to access. We've got 3 different types of bargaining styles. So when we talk to children, we call passive bargaining a do nothing plan. It's like someone saying, I expect everybody else to meet my needs and I don't take responsibility or direct action myself to recover them. So someone who is a passive bargainer will hope that the signals they're giving out will be recognised by someone else and that someone else will meet their needs. So for example, to continue with our school refuser, by remaining in their bed, they're giving out signals that could be interpreted as them wanting someone else to sort their situation out for them. And as a parent, it would be natural to want to step in there, and vice versa. The parent might leave them to it and let them suffer the consequences the school gives out and be passive in that as well. The bad bossy plan is how we describe choosing aggressive bargaining, and I will take whatever action is necessary to meet my own needs, regardless of the consequences on others. So they may take what they want, and they don't care what effect it has on another or what reaction they'll have. This style of bargaining will usually get a result quite quickly. It will also usually get the person what they want or need quickly, without considering the effect that might have on others though. And it can greatly impact on relationships. The school refuser, for example, might kick off, shout, scream, swear, become physically aggressive because they feel strongly about not going to school. And on the other hand, an aggressively bargaining parent might be shouting out of anger, dragging them out of bed, threatening them with various losses of privileges because their value is getting them to school, because they might get into trouble or fined these days. I believe in England you get fined for not having your children in school or taking them out. But a good plan using assertive bargaining says, I take responsibility and action for my own needs, whilst also respecting the needs of those around me. So an assertive bargainer can express their wants and needs without shaming or guilting somebody else, and can hear the needs of others. And, you know, working together, we can have our needs met whilst minimising secondary losses. And I think, for example, it's better for a parent to step in here when the child is struggling. Try to encourage the child to talk and hear what is really going on. What's the child's value and reasoning for choosing not to go? What is it they really need in this situation? We all have our own bargaining dependent on the different settings we find ourselves in. But I'd like you to take a moment and think about your children and how they bargain. Don't need to tell me or anything. Do they hide away? Are they quiet? You know, do they wait for someone else to help them? Or do you see them more kicking off and having temper tantrums when they have a need? Or are they good at working together and negotiating and making a plan to recover a loss? So I'm going to quickly look over this because we're quickly running out of time. But usually when we're working with individuals, these are the lists that we would give out for people to identify in themselves. And they may see across all lists, you might do something from all of them. But it, you know, and sometimes our bargaining is shaped with how we've grown up, you know, what we learned at home when we were young. And there are sometimes survival needs to be used for, like, so sometimes somebody is passive because that helped them survive in difficult situations when they were younger. And again, we all, like I always use the example of, you know, if you see a child crossing the road and a car is coming, you're going to grab them off the road. That might seem like an aggressive method, but you're not going to stand and negotiate with them at that point. You're really going to, you know, step in there and save the child. But assertive bargaining can take longer when we're, you know, trying to use these, because we're respecting each other's. We're not just being selfish and thinking of our own needs at this point. We're being considerate of both parties. We're taking time to communicate and to protect a relationship, but and it takes courage and trust in that. And it's more likely to be successful. But all in this, you know, it's really good to, you know, use and teach assertive bargaining to our children. It's important that they learn these social skills, they access empathy for others and being aware of our body language when we're communicating, because it all really makes such a difference as well. So again, ultimately, we want to get back to where life feels good. Emotional logic gives us that language and method that allows us to healthily communicate with our families across the different ages and stages as we express our needs and we get to understand each other. Now, I'm aware you've been given so much information. We're totally running out of time. So I'm just going to quickly, acknowledge how to help someone who comes home upset, acknowledge the emotion is there, offer the cards if you're able to get them on our online shop. Show me how you feel with these. It can help them really feel part of their emotional journey there. We can identify safe places for different members of the family. I feel like if you can take anything away from this evening, understanding how shock happens in your body and in your child's body, and identifying safe places, safe people, safe mindsets is something that can really help someone's situation. We can read the backs of the cards that seem most significant to them. Now, looking at our materials online in our shop, we've got the picture cards, as we said. That's all ages to help with healthy emotional communication. We've got our Shelley and Friends book, which are, we can aim at ages 7 to 10. We've got things for older children there as well. We've got the emotional survival kit for tweens and teens. Again, you can have a closer look online when you've got a little bit more time. I don't want to take up your whole evening. We've got online introductory guides. We've got personalised learning appointments where you can come and meet with people like myself and Caroline. We have one-to-one appointments and we can speak through you get a full hour basically with us, just one-to-one, and you can talk things through the tools. We've got a book that was written by Dr. Marion Griffiths here with Dr. Trevor as well, which is really, really excellent. Now, we've got this part of the questions. Now, I understand some people might want to head off because that's 8:30, so please don't feel like you have to stay on. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or to send me an email and we can have a bit more of a discussion. I'm going to come out of this just now. Here we go. There we go. You can see a few of us anyway. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now or feel free to head off. And, if you think of something, please do just email me afterwards as well. There we go. I'm just bringing that up. Okay. But if you would like to go, it's been lovely having you. Thank you so much for listening. I did lose I've just realised I've lost a bit my slide. I'm just going to see if I had a slide that actually told us about. Nope, it's disappeared. I've lost a slide along the way. Anyway, if you are interested in going further with emotional logic, what I would say is that we have the one-to-one, the personal learning appointments, if that was of interest to you. We also have our foundation level course, which is a 4-week course, 2 hours per webinar, and you work with a coach like myself or a trainer, sorry, and we take you through the foundation level of emotional logic, and you can actually do an accredited version of that where you get 30 CPD points. Please, if you need any financial support at all, we do have bursaries available, so please do get in touch with the Emotional Logic Centre and express that. We have courses coming up. I'm running Tuesday mornings in October. And there is also, I believe, a Friday afternoon in November on offer at the moment. So if those timings help or were of use to you, then please do get in touch with the Emotional Logic Centre and sign up for those. So those who do the foundation course can move on to the coaching course, can move on to the training course. It just depends on how much you want to be involved and how much you want to learn. But there's plenty to do, isn't there, Caroline? Lots to do. She's nodding.
Add to, there's also another Foundation Awards course on a Friday evening, 7 till 9 o'clock.
Oh, brilliant.
Of September and finishing in November with a little break in the middle. So there's an evening as well if people want something in the evening.
Thank you, Caroline, because I was wondering if there was, but I couldn't see it. Like I was rushing through the event, so I appreciate you coming in and saying that. So yes, if any of those timings were suiting to anybody, then that's great. But I think we're going to close it just now. We've not got any questions, and that's us for this evening. So thank you for joining me, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now, if I can. There we go, I've stopped it.